Howdy folks, Deacon Parsons here. Today's topic is the difference between being an American and a U.S. citizen, and how skin color just does not figure into the mix. With the four mean girls of the apocalypse pitching hissy fits, there's a lot of controversy about who is a real American and what do real Americans think, do, and say. Well, it's a fair question, and we're going to discuss it today. To begin with, let's get the paperwork out of the way. There can be a difference between being a citizen of the United States of America and being an American. One can be a citizen of the U.S. without being an American. One can also be an American without being a citizen of the U.S. Anyone with the proper paperwork can be a citizen of the United States of America. Either have a birth certificate or naturalization papers, and you can get a passport that says, boom, you are legally a U.S. citizen. Now, being an American is different. To be an American is to epitomize the living ideals and qualities that make America great. From the Declaration of Independence, quote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed," unquote. And then later in the document, quote, "And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honors," unquote. To condense this into a single sentence, an American solemnly pledges their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor to protect liberty and justice for all. There are today millions of U.S. citizens who work against liberty and justice for all. They refuse to subscribe, as our founders did, to the axiom that is ascribed to Voltaire, quote, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," unquote. This enlightened self-interest cannot be overstated. Understanding that unless everybody has liberty and justice, no one has liberty and justice, it is what makes America and Americans unique under the sun. Now, it was a concept some 1,600 years in the making when it finally bloomed in North America in the late 1700s. Its path to fruition began in the Gospels of the New Testament. Now, hold on there, Deacon. I did not click on this video to hear a sermon. Well, that's good, because I ain't here to preach one. I realize that in 2019 there are a lot of people who don't believe the Bible is factual. We can have that conversation some other day. However, if we are honest with history, we will have to acknowledge that the Bible was considered to be factual for centuries. As Christianity flourished and became a dominant religion, the factuality of the Bible became a dominant paradigm in the West. As such, it was a major influence in Western life and thought, especially from the Reformation forward. It is my intent to follow the root text of what became Americanism from its beginning until it was established in 1776. That does not require you, dear viewer, to accept the Bible as fact, but you will need to accept the historical truth that many people in history did consider it factual, and as such it influenced their thoughts. And so we begin. There are four precepts taught by Jesus that would grow to become America. The first two are found in several places, but we're going to read Matthew 22 verses 36 through 40, where Jesus condenses the entire Bible into two concepts. "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and prophets." Okay, the first concept. There is a power and authority greater than humans. The second concept, we must treat other humans fairly. Another way of saying this is the more famous golden rule from Matthew 7:12. Therefore all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. Okay, the third concept is that religion is and must be a personal choice. Jesus in Revelation 3 verse 20 says, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and will dine with him, and he with me. In Mark 16:15 through 16, he says, And he said to them, Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. He who has believed and has been baptized shall be saved, but he who has disbelieved shall be condemned. Nobody has to become a follower of Jesus. Christianity cannot be spread by the sword. Now I know that people will point to certain historical accounts that say otherwise. What I am saying is if it was spread by the sword, it was not the spirituality that Jesus taught. The fourth concept is the separation of church and government. Mark 12:17. Jesus said to them, Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they were amazed at him. When Jesus was on trial, he told Pilate in John 18:36, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm. Now this was a huge paradigm shift for the time. Rome was very liberal about religion. It allowed conquered peoples to keep their religion. It just required those people to also worship the government-mandated gods in addition to their traditional gods. Okay, now we have these four precepts originating in 1st century Israel under Roman occupation. Precept number 1, there is a higher authority than humans. Number 2, treat other people with the same consideration you want them to treat you. Number 3, religion is a personal decision. And number 4, Christianity is not to be a theocratic earthly government. There is to be a separation of religion and government. All right. How did these ideals get to North America, and what part, if any, did race play? Well, in a word, none. Christianity began as a Jewish sect. Jesus was a Jew. He was not Judean, as some racist groups suggest, but a full-fledged son of Abraham, Jacob, and David. You're just going to have to deal with that reality. The first non-ethnic Jew was a proselyte Jew, the Ethiopian eunuch. Acts chapter 8. Christianity left Israel for sub-Saharan Africa first. The first Gentile was apparently Italian. Centurion Cornelius, Acts chapters 10 and 11. From there, Christianity spread throughout the Middle East, into Egypt, Asia, and into Europe. Now, for just under the first 300 years or so, Christianity went from one persecution to the next. And then the worst possible catastrophe happened. The Roman Emperor Constantine not only ended persecutions, but he made Christianity the state religion. As you can imagine, the shift from converts risking their lives to become a Christian to converts gaining earthly power and wealth for becoming a Christian had a corrupting effect on the quality of people and the spirituality of the church. Fast forward to about 1455, when Gutenberg's movable type printing began to make the Bible available outside the Roman Church's control. In 1492, Columbus, under the Spanish flag, discovers the Western Hemisphere. Spain and Portugal came to Central and South America under the Roman Church's authority. Notice that in this case, white Europeans coming to the New World did not create liberty and justice for all. They brought with them the status quo, the common denominator of all human beings, conquest and plunder. In 1517, in Germany, Martin Luther's 95 Theses begins what's called the Reformation, as honest Christians began to seek the purer roots of their faith. In 1532, Henry VIII broke with the Roman Church, and the Church of England was created. This was for purely political reasons, but it did have the unintended consequence of people questioning the Roman status quo. In 1587, English settlers arrived at Roanoke Island, but the colony failed. In 1607, Jamestown, the first colony to succeed, was founded in Virginia, and it was specifically Church of England. However, in 1620, the Pilgrims came to a new world for religious reasons rather than economic ones. Soon other religious groups followed. In the beginning, none of them were really interested in religious freedom for everyone else, just for themselves. That changed about 1677 when William Penn brought his Quaker and Enlightenment values to his colony of Pennsylvania. Penn died in 1718, a short 60 years before the shot heard round the world was fired, and the Founding Fathers enunciated their ideals of inalienable rights endowed by the Creator and committed their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish liberty and justice for all. So, the teachings of a first-century rabbi traveled from Jerusalem and Israel through Europe to North America. Does the skin color of the people that carried it make a difference? Not hardly. North American racism is unique in the world. It's the only place where racism is proposed at the macro level. While all Asians are yellow-skinned, they don't count their race by skin color, but by smaller national ethnic groups. Chinese people do not consider Japanese people to be the same race. Neither do Koreans, Siamese, etc. The same applies to Africa. Hutus and Tutsis are both black, but neither considers the other the same race. Same with Zulu, Maasai, and every other African tribe. It is the same in North America. The Lakota and the Crow were both red, but blood enemies, not blood brothers of the red skin. It's even the same in Europe. Germans and French have always considered themselves different races. Saxons, Normans, and Danes were all of Nordic stock, but considered themselves different races. And even though science tells us that Scot and Irish are both Celtic, if you try and tell them they are white brothers, the only thing they'll agree upon is that you are wrong and should probably be beaten. If being American were skin color thing, why didn't the white people who didn't come here develop into Americans? Some English, French, and Spanish settlers came to North America, but most didn't. The same with Scots, Irish, German, Russian, Poles, Italians, and everyone else. It wasn't their skin color that mattered, it was their ideals. It took centuries for the radical precepts of a first-century rabbi to express themselves by creating the most prosperous and free nation to ever exist. But it was their ideals that made people Americans, not their skin color. Anyone, anywhere, can solemnly pledge their life, their fortune, and their sacred honor to protect liberty and justice for all. If you can do that, it doesn't matter what passport you hold, you are an American. And if you can't do that, it doesn't matter what passport you hold, you are not an American. This is Deacon Parson saying, keep your powder dry, love your maker, love your mate, and do what's right because it's right, and devil take the hindmost.